What's happened in the last year is a couple things. So with all of the economic pressures that are happening and some of the talks of recession, I think consumers have just been a little bit more reticent to purchase, especially purchase away from the big brand names that they know, or white label brands, etc. On top of that, customer acquisition costs have been rising really steadily. There's just so much saturation in the market that a lot of brands have started to really struggle with not only gaining new customers, but retaining customers. So what we're seeing is that the successful brands are having to pivot into retail.
Hey, this is where I talk to the best drivers of the direct-to-consumer industry, like founders, investors, marketers, CROs, agencies, and dwell into strategies that they've been using to build some great D2C businesses. Let's go on the DTC Drive. I'm your host, Ashish Ramamurthy. Thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. We are here today with Jamie Roller from Dr Squatch. So, Jamie, thank you so much for being, so great from past 1 week. Right, talking to you has been amazing. Loving all that you're doing, giving back to the community now. Right, so through your learnings of being in e-commerce. You're in that stage that you want to talk to other people, you want to contribute, you want to build other e-commerce brands as well while you're building Dr. Squatch. So thank you so much for being here. For people who have tuned in, let's hear more from Jamie, right? So Jamie, why don't you give a little bit of background in terms of what you've been doing, all these years? What's keeping you up?
Yeah, and first, Ashish, thanks so much for connecting and for chatting to me. I think we've had a really great time just brainstorming with you and chatting about how we've been kind of working in our different industries, and just really appreciate the connection there. I guess quick background on me. So I started my career as a strategy consultant in South Africa, worked in a bunch of different industries, and I think that just gave me a good understanding of how a business runs. But I've always been super passionate about the e-commerce space, and I've always been a real native e-commerce shopper. And so I found my way into South Africa's biggest e-commerce marketplace, which is called takealot.com, and I managed two different departments there, the beauty department and the books department. And I think that was just a great learning experience for me, how online retail works, how marketplaces work. After a couple of years there, I went and got my master's in London, and then from there I moved on to an Amazon aggregator. Basically, we would buy up successful Amazon brands and grow them and expand them and take them into retail and take them international. So got some really great experience working with Amazon. And from there, I was recruited to work at Dr. Squatch, which is where I'm working now. I manage Dr. Squatch's marketplace business. So that's Amazon, Walmart, Target.com, etc. And Dr. Squatch is a really exciting brand, and I'm very super excited to be part of the team. Dr. Squatch is about 10 years old by now, and what the brand is it's a men's personal care brand. So we sell soap, hair care, deodorant for men, and really all natural stuff. And the great thing is we built a really great community of customers through just having a really playful spin on our products and our brand. So we really built it up to be a really big business and a successful business. And the D2C side of the business is really strong. The Amazon side of the business is also really strong now, and I'm thrilled to be managing that. And it has its own challenges, of course. But the one exciting thing is that we're also moving into retail and doing that pretty successfully. And I think that's the next step for us. So pretty exciting time to be at the company. One of my big goals this year is to write more. I think having been in e-commerce for a long time, there's a lot of thoughts that kind of go around your head, and you learn a lot, and you see a lot of things happening, and you see the growth of the industry. And I really want to start getting my thoughts down, and also just improving my skills as a writer and connecting with people in my industry and brands that are doing different things. And so one big thing that I've been doing more of is writing on LinkedIn, writing on my Substack. So I've been doing a lot of that. And then, of course, just the average, you know how it is at the beginning of the year, you set your strategy for the year and you have to go out and make the strategy. So doing a lot of strategy work.
So I really want to dive into what is happening in the US market as of now, right? How has been the shift of consumer behavior, brands building up right now? Not like even from the last 2 years, right? How has been the entire shift in consumer behavior, and also what are brands right now focusing on, right? What has become important for brands right now? Is online working for them? Is offline the future? Is it both? What's going on?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think we are seeing some big shifts. So as you all know, there was a huge just explosion of online activity with the COVID pandemic. And I think we saw firstly, a lot of brands that had been chugging along for a couple of years, doing okay, suddenly explode and become hugely successful. D2C first brands or brands that were operating on Amazon, suddenly those brands were really successful, and we saw a lot of new brands launching and gaining a lot of traction. What's happened in the last year is a couple things. So with all of the economic pressures that are happening and some of the talks of recession, I think consumers have just been a little bit more reticent to purchase, especially purchase away from the big brand names that they know, or white label brands, etc. On top of that, customer acquisition costs have been rising really steadily. There's just so much saturation in the market that a lot of brands have started to really, really struggle with not only gaining new customers, but retaining customers. So what we're seeing is that the successful brands are having to pivot into retail. And that's exactly what I alluded to earlier, is that we're one of the big growth levers that we're putting this year is move to retail. And the other thing that's happening is a lot of the smaller brands are folding and leaving the space. And I think that's inevitable with a market that's growing as explosively as online retail. You're going to see some peaks and troughs. But that's, I think, largely what we're seeing is that brands are going to have to be really strong in their cross-channel strategies. They're going to have to make sure that they can touch customers at all points in their shopping journey. They're going to have to make sure they have really well-aligned brand strategies that really grip the customer and make them want to come back for more.
Smaller brands don't have enough of cash to go offline, right? They do small pop-ups, they go to events, they maybe go to festivals, or maybe even some places where their consumers is just enjoying out. Bigger brands can afford that, right? They can have their own store, experience store, they can create that stuff. How do smaller brands sustain, especially this year? What do you say about that?
Yeah. So I think there's two main ways that I'm seeing smaller brands make this work. And that is looking more broadly at the online channels that they can play in. I mean, if you're a D2C native brand, then you can look at other online channels like Amazon, like the other big marketplace channels, like other channels internationally. There's a lot of places to play, and there are partners that can help you get up and running in those places pretty nimbly and quickly. So that's one way that you can just get a lot more traffic and a lot more eyes on your brand. You can do it pretty efficiently with relatively low ad spend, and that'll just bring in some incremental revenue, incremental recurring revenue that'll help you kind of maintain that growth. The second place that I would say, and that's how Dr Squatch actually gained some traction in retail, is in smaller retail stores, so gifting and smaller wholesale channels. And I think that's not to be overlooked. I mean, that's how you start in retail, right? You're not going to start in selling in a huge retailer. You're going to start through smaller channels. And I've done this before with a brand. It's literally like, if you are selling a tea brand, if you're a tea brand, it's literally reaching out to 150 coffee shops and tea shops and saying, like, I have a really great product here. It would work great in your store, in your coffee shop. Let's, what can we do to work on here? And just slowly building up that little bit of wholesale revenue that kind of helps your brand grow. And then when you get that proof point, it's much easier to go to more brick and mortar retailers or wholesale customers and say, we already have 50 other customers just like you. We're happy to, work on something.
While a lot of people have actually given me questions to ask you, right? Yeah. When they were wanting to be part of this. So I'm going to pick out some. what are the biggest data reporting challenges for companies selling on marketplaces?
That's a great question. And it's something I ask myself every day. It's like, what are the challenges here? Because we face a lot of challenges, and the overarching problem, I think, is that, I'll use Amazon as an example because they are kind of the ones that set the bar for the rest of the channels. Basically, what happens is you just don't get personal information data. You don't get PII data. What this means is, you know what it looks like if you own a Shopify store. You get name, you get address, you get phone number, you know exactly when they last purchased. With Amazon, you get none of that. You might get name and zip code, but you don't know when your customers are repurchasing. So it's very hard to, one, target your customers, and two, analyze what your customers are doing. We're thinking about this in two ways. We work with agency partners who are helping us. And of course, I've worked at brands where we weren't able to do this before because we just didn't have the scale to do this. So I'll admit that this is definitely a tactic that we're able to use because we have some scale, but the possibility does exist. We work with some agency partners where they're able to plug into that PII data, give us access to some customer information so that we can, for example, analyze lifetime value of our customers. The other thing is we're working with some new innovative apps are coming out that what they do is they allow customers to actually sign over their marketplace data, and then you get access to their data. So I think we're going to start seeing a revolution in what we have access to, because customers want better deals and we want to be able to serve them better deals, and marketplaces aren't giving us that. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more of these apps pop up where customers can give you their data in exchange for rewards, and then you'll be able to market to them better.
This is already happening with an app called Cred here in India.
Yeah.
So they've built out this entire financial platform where people who, if their average income is, greater than some point, you become this part of this community. You get this privilege of all the coupons, of all the rewards while you're spending, and also other brands with it.
Yeah, there's a company that we're just starting to work with called Brand Club. They're owned by a company called Stackline that does a lot of big level data analysis in the industry. And what they do is it's basically exactly like I described it. It's like an app where a customer can download it. They agree to signing over their purchase data to the app on all of the marketplace channels, on Walmart.com, Target.com, Amazon.com, Kroger, even your D2C site. And then we have access to target them specifically with deals, coupons, videos, and drive them directly to our D2C store, which is something obviously we've never been able to do. And that's super exciting for us, but it's certainly something we've never seen before. And this is only just kicking off. Things are changing, but the biggest challenge is definitely just not being able to get the customer data, and it makes it very difficult to know for example, what your LTV is. Awesome. I think there was a question from Salima on how to analyze customer data that we get from the third-party apps. So yes, we do combine it with D2C data. Our company actually uses Looker, which is a Google product. We pull in the data from Amazon's marketplace. We pull in the whatever data they give us on sales and advertising, etc. And we do look at it on a blended basis with our D2C.
Anupam had asked this question. So somebody buys from you, you've spent your ads, right? You've made your one-time purchases, you've nudged them for a few things. But retention in whole is just not that, right? Retention in whole is building a good community, remarketing, building that loyalty. There's a lot which goes on in that retention loop. If somebody had to pick between building a community to remarketing, what are the pros, cons? How do you weigh that? Right.
That's a tough question. I think, you always want to optimize for having customers who are going to be loyal and come back to your brand at zero cost to you. So building a community is a very, very good reason to do that. And I mean, there are always going to be some costs to do that. You know, it might be the cost of hitting them with an SMS or a WhatsApp message, or an email, you know, like just to keep yourself relevant. Remarketing, like specifically, is make sure you're retargeting customers who might not have been ready to purchase. But I'll give you, like, on Amazon specifically, we've got a couple ways of remarketing to customers. And one of the main ways is through DSP marketing, which is demand side platform. Segment the customer base on Amazon and send them ads that show up in very specific locations. We've done some testing on this and we found it to be very low return on ad spend. So I think it also really depends on the channel that you're getting the customers and the source of the customers. On marketplaces, I think that customers are really very bottom of funnel on Amazon. So if they're going to Amazon, they've already got a product in mind that they want to buy, and remarketing on that platform is, you know, our hypothesis is that it's likely not the most effective way to use your money. However, if a customer is looking on Facebook and maybe they just weren't ready to purchase, then it might be more effective to retarget them with with your product again down the road and see if that works. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Since you mentioned that, TikTok has taken a huge eyeballs in the recent times, yeah, right? Compared to Meta, I see some part of the community saying, "Hey, Meta ads still work. It's the best platform to go." But some of them are saying, "Nah, let's go TikTok." How do you break this? I
think ultimately it comes down to where the traffic is, where the customers are, and what the return on ad spend you're going to get is. So like what your CPAs are on each platform. I mean, we look at it very much on a return basis. And I don't want to speak too much for our paid media team because that's not my area. But how I've looked at it in the past when I've worked more directly on this is always just, where are we seeing the performance? I think it's very, very brand specific which platform is going to perform for your customers and for your brand. And I think those things also change over time, and it's very important to keep that in mind, especially like either as your customer mix changes, as the platform itself changes. I mean, we all know how like the platform's algorithms can change and it totally changes your ad performance. Or, you know, as Apple releases a new iOS and we have different access to customer data. So I think really like my only advice is like follow the numbers, follow where you're getting the performance, follow what makes sense for your brand, but keep testing. Yeah,
I mean, I hear you. iOS 14 and 16 are still creating a lot of waves within the ecosystem, and it's all dependent on them, right?
Yeah.
Moving on. Okay, so we have a few questions around Dr. Squatch, right? Yep. There are three questions to you. At what point did Dr. Squatch realize they needed to go offline?
I haven't been too close to this, so I can't really speak to this too much. But what my understanding of how it was we built up a very successful wholesale and gift channel, which is what I was alluding to earlier, where we were selling to smaller stores, to smaller grocers, to hardware stores, etc. And at a certain point, I think it was, my understanding is that it was a combination of, there was a really strong demand for our product in some of the bigger stores. And we knew that we needed to build out that team because it was inevitable that at our rates of sale through D2C, we were going to be successful in retail. So I think it was both a push-pull thing where we knew that we're not going to be forcing ourselves into these stores. There's need there, but we realized we needed to actually build and scale a team around this.
Thank you so much for answering that. Okay. I think this is somebody who has studied Dr. Squatch's story. So there's a specific question. I don't know if you can answer it, but how did Dr. Squatch manage to be profitable until 2017? And how did they crack the partnership with Raindrop? Is this something that you're aware of?
I don't know how we cracked the partnership with Raindrop, but I know that was hugely instrumental in our success. I mean, like if you know anything about our story, you'll know that we did a Super Bowl ad back in 2021, and that was one of the moments that I think was, I wasn't at Dr Squatch then, but I think it was a big turning point in both like our level of investment in the brand and also just the enormous success of the brand. So I think that was a bit like literally like a J curve in our revenue. The profitability question is interesting, and I will say that from my experience working with Dr Squatch, we're just enormously blessed with having a lot of really smart people that are looking at the numbers, both in the marketing team and the product team and the finance team. And we were never going to be it seems to me in retrospect obvious that we were never going to be a brand that was running at a loss for years and years and years, just trying to discount to make our product sell. That we really knew exactly how we wanted to, we knew what space we were playing in. We were selling a slightly premium product, and our team was looking at the numbers at what made sense to get there without having to use like a discounting strategy to get there. So I think that to me is like, when you have a lot of smart people looking at the problem, and they're not going to go with like let's sell this low so we can compete with Dove soap or Dial soap. We are going to make sure that we sell a premium product and can run a business doing it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. There are a few other questions, but I guess they are not here. But let me actually take it up in a different way. So I think you met Ravi, right, in the community, who was trying to fix his FBA stuff. And he actually wanted to know that, okay, I'm building a brand outside of the US, right, as a DTC e-commerce brand. Let's say you're an African brand or you're an Indian brand. How do I tap into US market? What are the things that, and maybe, I don't know if there's a checklist or, something on that front. How do I get into the US market?
I think where this question is coming from is like, when you look at Amazon US, it's very saturated, and it's, to be honest, and to be maybe a bit brutal, like there's a lot of instances where I say it actually doesn't make sense to launch in the US market. You're going to send inventory, it's not going to sell, you're going to have to spend money on ads, you're not going to make a return. So I guess the first thing I would do is I would qualify whether there's enough white space and also enough success in your niche to justify launching a product there. This is something I did for a large part of my role when I was working at the Amazon aggregator, is literally just Amazon market research. So you can, I think, like a good starting point is there are some tools like Helium 10, Jungle Scouts that you can download, and the free plans have plenty of information, but they're relatively inexpensive. And what you can do is you can look at all of the listings for a specific keyword or in a specific category. And how I would suggest going about it is look at, say, for example, you want to launch a new face cream or something like that. You can search for face cream in Amazon, on Amazon.com, see, is there anyone making like more than $200,000 on this, but with less than 100 reviews or less than 1,000 reviews. So you'd need to kind of set the thresholds yourself. But the key is that you're looking for, is someone generating a lot of money without having been there for a long time, or without having had to generate so much customer support that they've just like overshot that hurdle. So for example, like the example that I brought up, face cream, it's a very, very saturated market. You're not going to find anyone there making a good amount of money unless they've got unless they're a big brand, they have lots and lots of reviews. So that's the first thing I would do is just vet that your product's going to make it in the market. It actually might be more successful for you to launch in some of the newer Amazon markets, like Middle East, like the Far East, like South America. Those are some markets that have a lot of white space and not a lot of not enough suppliers yet. The second thing I would do is obviously do unit economics, just work out what it's going to cost to sell there, how much you think you're going to sell based on search demand. And that's something that's key, is like, if you can capture 2% of your search demand and you make a 10% conversion rate, how much does that work out to, and what is it worth sending inventory? And then finally, like, it's worth speaking to an Amazon expert just to make sure you've got all of the boxes checked for import and export. I'm certainly no expert on this, but there are a lot of like compliance related things that you need to do that only like that experts will be able to tell you what to do and whether or not you can do them. And then the last, once you've ascertained like whether it makes economic sense to launch, get your listings up, make sure they're SEO friendly, make sure you've got advertising, etc. So I think that's how I would go about launching in something like that, the US marketplace. And to answer the question, is Dr. Squatch planning on launching in India? Yes, we're looking at launching in India. This actually speaks very nicely to the question that was just asked. We looked at the costs of launching in India and versus the benefits. And it's actually like, it's extremely expensive for us to ship products from the US to India right now. And because we don't have a D2C presence in India, so we're not spending money on ads there, we're not going to be generating a lot of organic demand. So we're kind of holding off a little bit for now, but it might happen in the future. So even for us, we're making these decisions, like some markets aren't worth launching in yet because the costs are just too high. And there's not enough organic demand for our specific brand there.
True that. It all comes down to shipping and demand primarily. Yeah. Everybody so much talks about cracking D2C that I think I want to know, how do you crack Amazon? Right.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something I think so many people are trying to do this, and like I said, like it's become so saturated. I think a few years ago there was a lot of money to be made just as an individual who you figure out like, where's a niche, I can sell screwdrivers because there's not a lot of screwdrivers on Amazon and I can really make a lot of money doing this. But it's become increasingly difficult to actually like do that because it's just become so saturated. And on top of that, Amazon is becoming more and more strict with what brands are doing and how they're managing.
So they recently launched this live commerce thing as well, right?
Yeah.
Is that working out for brands? Like, has Dr. Squatch done anything from that time?
We've not used it. I think it's probably working for some very specific brands like beauty brands, DIY brands. I'm a little bit of a skeptic of stuff like that Amazon launches because, it's in Amazon's DNA, like 9 times out of 10, the things they launch are going to fail. And what really works on Amazon is PPC, like pay-per-click ads. That's what works well for us. We've tried a couple other things. We've tried DSP, and most of it, like, it's really just getting the basics right. So, to answer your question, like, if you have a product, a really good product in a really good niche that's like customers want, I think you have to start with that. And then I think I might have said this to you before, Ashish, but like, you have to be prepared to spend some money on advertising to rank really well. And I think that's something that I think a lot of like brands don't plan for and don't think of, because you need to be willing to spend to rank at the top of the search results.
Also, we have seen this entire, I don't know, it's a pattern, right? That if a category needs to be created, or if a category needs its own marketplace, then somebody is out there creating that, right? Because let's say if you're saying a vegan product, right? And there's not much consumers out there, like the community is still building up, that whole movement needs its own, strategy on itself as an ecosystem, right? So we've seen this, thing that, hey, okay, we're going to build a marketplace where people from that community will come and buy vegan products, right? Do you see this happening across the world moving forward with every category possible? Since like if I see Amazon, it's like a mothership right now, right? But everybody has to compete there, right? There's more eyeballs, specific eyeballs, which you can gain in category marketplaces. Do you have any thoughts on that?
this is just my opinion, but I don't think we're going to see like specific marketplaces overtaking any of the big guys in total, in like, in revenue in total versus Amazon. So I don't think we're going to see Amazon losing significant market share to lots of little guys that are building up their like mini marketplaces. However, I do think we're going to see a shift to two things, and that is like aggregator sites, which do exactly what you're alluding to. That's like taking great brands and pulling them together and saying like, we collect and collate all of the best for you specifically, and turning it into like really beautiful collections, so that customers with a specific flavor, whether it's like in fashion or in gaming or in vegan foods, they have to stop at one shop. I think that's going to become something where it works for the customers because they get a really nice selection of D2C brands or just any brands. And it also works for the people who are doing it because they don't have to own any inventory. They just have to be these like curators. I think we're also going to see something else, which is that brands are going to start, and we're already seeing it, like brands are going to start launching into more partnerships with each other.
Yeah, I mean, basically sharing their audiences. Yeah, I mean, I think Shopify I saw the Shopify predictions for 2023. This is all coming because of that raising costs of audiences and building partnerships between each other to create better experiences for the same kind of audience, but in a shared experience. Right? Dr.
Squatch is looking at doing something like that. So we're exploring a few. Canal and Caro are two of the main ones that we've seen to be pretty useful. And so what they basically offer is that they offer you a partnership with other brands, and then they basically just import your products over to Shopify, and you can sell them on your site in your post-purchase flow. You can make bundles with them, etc. So we're definitely it's something that's very top of mind for us. Is how can we both improve our conversion rates and AOVs, but also just offer our customers something exciting, test out new products for ourselves. That maybe one day, if we're a personal care brand, right? So what if we sell towels from another brand, and then if it works really well for us, then we know our customers really want towels, then we launch a towel ourselves. So there's a lot of reasons that this is kind of an exciting strategy.
I can understand this from the acquisition piece, but when you're sitting with your data in a platform where you have all of your data as a brand, and when you're trying to plug in products to send recommendations, now you gotta connect their store as well, and share that data together. I see a lot of issues there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be complex. We don't yet know exactly how it's going to work, but how we'll probably do it is we'll just tag it all. We'll create a tag that's partner products, partner brands, and yeah. Okay. Awesome. Cool. Amazing. Thanks, Jamie. Every time we have a conversation, always it goes into a different thread altogether in my head. Thanks so much for being here and taking your time. I think all of us loved having you here, and let's do more of this. Let's bring in more people. Let's talk more about DTC e-commerce and all of that stuff. Yeah. Great. Yeah. And thanks everyone for listening. And thanks, Ashish, for having me. This was a great conversation. Very exciting, and love brainstorming with you. Awesome. Lovely. See ya. Thanks, Jamie, for tuning in. Bye-bye. Thanks, guys. Bye.